Executive Director of the Reedsburg Area Chamber of Commerce, and I just most sincerely want to welcome all of you here today. It's a very special day in Reedsburg, and of course, as you know, we're here to dedicate and cut the ribbon for this beautiful mural. The mural project was inspired by the historical event that occurred at the Chicago Northwestern Depot in Reedsburg in December of 1873, and it is the result of the combined efforts of the Little Eagle Arts Foundation and Reedsburg Arts Link. Today's dedication of the mural really brings full circle the important legacy of Chief Ahu-Choga, which in English means blue wing, as well as the significance of the event in Reedsburg's history. I thought it would be important to understand the Reedsburg that existed in 1873 when this event occurred. It was a community that consisted of Ho-Chunk families who had settled here, including Chief Ahu-Choga and some white settlers. The 1850 census showed just 122 people in Reedsburg, compared to the 10,000 that we have here today. But in 1873, Reedsburg still had a flour mill, sawmill, and dam down on the Baraboo River, a main street that they called Shanty Row, a general store, post office, and hotel, a school, newspaper, and bank, a police and fire department, a brewery, and a few churches. Just the year before, in 1872, the first telegraph message was sent to Reedsburg, which brought news of the outside world. The first train also pulled up to the original wooden depot in 1872, allowing local farmers and businessmen to not only sell and ship their goods, but also allowed the easy transport of much-needed supplies into Reedsburg and brought visiting people as well. And just to be clear, the depot that is behind us now, the beautiful brick depot today, actually was built in 1905 and opened in 1906. So this story takes place in the wooden depot that was built in 1872. The Ho-Chunk people, and Chief Ahu-Choga in particular, were friends and neighbors of Reedsburg's white settlers. Ahu-Choga was considered one of the founding members of Reedsburg because he owned 40 acres of land and was instrumental in helping the tribal members and the white settlers develop good, strong friendships, and they respected each other. It is easy to understand then why members of the community stood up in strong protest when they learned that soldiers had arrived by train in the middle of the night to take the family away by force, put them in boxcars, and relocate them to a reservation in Nebraska. It must have taken a great deal of courage for the people of Reedsburg to stand up and defend one of their own community members against the armed soldiers and actually block that train. But that is what they did, and they were able to stop the removal of the family. Some people believe that the Ho-Chunk remain in this area yet today because of the strength and determination of those citizens and of Chief Ahu-Choga and his family. And it is believed that the protests by the Reedsburg residents may have contributed to ending the policy of forced Native American relocations in our country. As a person who has always and only considered Reedsburg my home, I am grateful to be able to stand here today and tell a part of this story because it reminds me of one of my favorite words, which is community. If you look at the word community, you will also find the word unity. When the Reedsburg residents of 1873 became aware of the offense that was being committed against Chief Ahu-Choga and other Ho-Chunk families in the area, they didn't hide or look away or run away. They stood together in the Wisconsin cold and united with their friend and their neighbor, Ahu-Choga, and together they changed Reedsburg and our country. Reedsburg continues to be a community filled with people who make their neighbors their friends. We welcome strangers with a handshake. We volunteer when there is a need. We support each other during difficult days, and we celebrate achievements together, being happy for each other when things go well. We still know that when one of us is strong, we are all stronger. Regardless of age or size, culture or ethnicity, educational background, social experience, or life history, we welcome diversity with a fresh perspective and the new opportunities it offers. Today, as we honor and remember the great man who helped unite our community, I want to recognize the family of Chief Ahu-Choga and say thank you. Although this special day comes nearly a century and a half later, I want you to know that your family continues to be an inspiration to us all, and that all Ho-Chunk people and Native American people are friends to our community. The legend of Chief Ahu-Choga, Chief Blue Wing, lives on in Reedsburg, and his story of kindness and friendship will continue to serve as a guide for many generations to come.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Christine, for that beautiful welcome and introduction. We feel very fortunate to have Christine as our Chamber of Commerce Director, and I knew you would have beautiful words, good moving words for us this morning, Christine. Thank you. I would also like to welcome the family of Ahu-Choga. We are so honored that you traveled the long distances that you have to be here with us today to dedicate this mural and to celebrate the Blue Wing Legacy project, with this being the highlight as well as the art market happening across the street. I was born and raised on a dairy farm outside of Reedsburg, and I grew up with virtually no awareness of the history of our Native American friends and neighbors. When I moved back after being away for about 25 years, I started reading the local paper, and in the paper was the story of Ahu-Choga and his family and what happened at the depot. The story was written by Bill Schutte, who's here today, and I thank him for his telling of that history. That was the first that I had known of the story, and I was very moved by it, and I couldn't believe that nobody had told me this story growing up. It seemed so important to our local community. I wanted to see if we could find a way to keep the story alive and retold and retold. And I had heard about Melanie Talmadge Sines, who is the director of Little Eagle Arts Foundation over in the Dells. And I called Melanie and said, you know, we talked about the story. We met for coffee, and I learned during that coffee that we had together that Melanie was also a descendant of Chief Ahu-Choga. We had a wonderful discussion. It was about a year and a half ago or more that we talked, and we talked about this mural project, but there was no funding. So we had a nice conversation that came to nothing at that point, other than a nice cup of coffee. About 6 months later, 9 months later, Melanie had a conversation with some folks from the First Peoples Fund at an event, and she told them about our conversation. And the First Peoples Fund representatives were very interested and said, why don't you submit an application? So Melanie did that, and here we are today.
And I just have to say, thank you, Earthmaker. It doesn't matter about grants. It doesn't matter about donations. What it matters about is that we're together as human beings, two-leggeds together here, created by Mauna in Ho-Chunk, Earthmaker, that has brought us all together. So thank you so much for such a beautiful day. As I look around the audience today, I'm thinking about my choka, my grandpa, John Artichoker, and his wife Emily, my grandma, and how happy they would be. I also think about, my Uncle Howard Windblow. He named me Chakshep Yulganga, Eagle Chiefess. He did all the research in the early 1970s, which kind of culminated with the commemoration of the Blue Wing community and the Blue Wing Memorial Cemetery in Tomah, Wisconsin. Thank you, Dega, for inspiring this project. I'm also so thankful for all of my Ahu-Choga relatives. If you're a direct descendant of Chief Blue Wing, can you please raise your hand so everyone can see? Let's give them a round of applause. So many of our relatives came all the way from South Dakota to be here for this gathering. And it just makes my heart so happy to welcome our Ho-Chunk relatives back to Ho-Chunk country here in Reedsburg. And they're staying at the casino, so they all did their free plays last night. So they're fully engaged as Ho-Chunk citizens. You know, we live in a time where we as human beings have the potential of being so divided internationally, nationally, regionally, and locally. But it took this man, Ahu-Choga, to bring people together. And to think of all the descriptors and all of the newspaper articles that talked about him, the two words that come out the most in all the historic articles that I read about him is the fact that he was a kind and gentle man. Isn't it wonderful that a human being with those two basic, simple qualities can bring together community, can allow opportunities for us as a tribe of 7,500 plus to remain in our homeland? I'm so, so grateful for all of us that are gathered here to symbolize that unity of community that Blue Wing inspired so many years ago. And this is our artist in residence, Mr. Wesley May.
Well, good morning, everybody. I'm gonna start this off by how about giving yourselves a round of applause for showing up here today. Without you, this would not be possible. And this is a very good project that's proud to be part of. You know, Ahu-Choga's legacy, you know, starts off from the past, the present, and the future. You know, his legacy from the past is what brought us together in the present. So then what we're doing in the present is going to bring it through to the future. And we'll all have our part here to talk about what we did with this. But this is a really good project. I'm proud to be part of it. I don't know, this mic kind of makes my voice sound resi, but I do it anyway. But yeah, Dad, I'd just like to thank Melanie and Joanne, especially the Descendants, Ahu-Choga, for bringing this project to life and together. Keep honoring this good man. All right. Thank you.
Okay. So it gives me a great opportunity today to introduce my Dega, my uncle, Butch Artichoker, who traveled all the way from South Dakota.
In Lakota, that means my relatives, includes all of you and everything around us. I greet you with a good heart today. My Lakota name is Wambliwa Chekia, which means praying eagle. And a number of years ago, John Winishek gave me a name, and I can't say it, because I was never really exposed to the Ho-Chunk language, but it translates into lightning bolt. So today, our family members came here from Colorado and South Dakota and Minnesota. My dad was the son of the third daughter of Blue Wing. And he had a sister that lived in, I think, Tama, Iowa, or somewhere in Iowa when she was older, and she passed away there. And he considered Melanie's grandmother his sister. And when he was in his last stages of life, he was waiting for her to come. So, you know, she made it before he passed on into the spirit world. Anyway, there's probably more than one story about how my father got his name. And the documents that we looked at and what the Historical Society has written is that Ahu-Choga died in 1893. And my father had 2 birth certificates. One showed that he was born in 1893. And so he would have been a newborn or very young when Ahu-Choga passed away. Another birth certificate showed that he was born in 1891. And so he'd have been 2 years old. So the story that he told me, he and my mom both told me, was that when he was born, his biological father was drinking, and his mother was very upset, and so she gave him the name of his grandfather, Ahu-Choga. His other grandfather was also a famous Ho-Chunk as well. His name was Little Priest, and so for the first 6 years or so of his life, my dad was known as Ahu-Choga, and he said one day some government employees, agents, came around enrolling children from school, and they asked him his name, and he said, it's Ahu-Choga, and they wrote it down as Artichoker. The other part of that I saw this morning was that when Ahu-Choga was here in this community back at that time, when people would ask him his name, as he said his name in Winnebago, it sounded like Artichoker, and so the name Artichoker apparently evolved before my dad's birth. I remember once in the service I called for some pizza, and as I went to pick it up, apparently across the road was a vegetable warehouse, and they thought I was joking when I said my name was Artichoker because they had artichokes over there. But as I grew older and I began to understand where my name came from, I didn't worry about the snickers and the ridicule because I knew the legacy of that name.